Hi, it's me, the wonderful game critic of fantasy, M1. Today I'm reviewing a very important visual novel called Sakuya Izayoi Gives You Advice and Dabs. You may have heard of this visual novel by its Japanese title, Izayoi Sakuya Gives You Advice and Dabs. Developed by Team Sigyad, Sakuya Izayoi Gives You Advice and Dabs is described as a software which focuses on mental health, with a twist at the end. Just like the meaning of the development team's name, the twist at the end is hinted at in the title. If the name in the title, Sakuya Izayoi, doesn't mean anything to you, that's because you don't know Touhou. This is a Touhou Project fan game, fan work. You might call it a parody. Touhou Project is a long-running series of games made mostly by a single developer, Junya Ota, more commonly called Zune. The Touhou games are vertically scrolling shoot-'em-up games. Specifically, they're danmaku or bullet hell shoot-'em-ups. This means huge numbers of enemy projectiles, often in complex patterns, with the gameplay emphasis being on dodging the projectiles rather than some particular offensive strategy. The first game in the series, highly responsive to prayers, has a fairly unique setup. It's kind of like Breakout, but Touhou 1 has some shoot-'em-up elements and boss fights. There are a few Touhou games with more high-level features that make them unique, but generally the series has since settled on the more straightforward danmaku focus I described. You know, the details can change, sometimes in creative ways, but you pretty much know what you're getting with the Touhou game. As of August last year, there are 17 mainline entries in the series, with several spin-offs as well. I think the series really started to get popular with its first Windows title, Touhou 6: The Embodiment of Scarlet Devil. It's in this game where our heroine of the day was first introduced, but she wasn't a heroine at the time. Like almost all the series' many characters, Sakuya's first appearance is as a boss. The maid of a wealthy and feared vampire, Sakuya uses her time-stopping powers, in combination with a ton of knives, to defend her master. She would later go on to be a playable character and naturally one of the more popular characters, one celebrated a lot by the Touhou fandom. The fanbase of Touhou might have more of a reputation than the series itself. This is largely thanks to the huge number of characters with masterful costume designs and a massive library of music that seriously contains several modern masterpieces of composition. Even people who aren't into shoot-'em-ups can appreciate the soundtracks. What really helps, though, is Zune's casual attitude towards fanworks. Contrary to what I've seen some people say, there are some limitations, some guidelines that Zune has laid out as far as what people can and can't do, but if you actually read the guidelines, it makes the intention of giving a lot of leeway to people very clear. Zune says, "For the usual activities in Dojin, uploading material on a homepage, selling them in a convention, or in a shop at your own expense, you do not need to notify me or request my permission. The copyright of derivative works belongs to the creators of said derivatives. If there is trouble regarding the derivatives of my work, I cannot take responsibility." So, there's an absolute ton of fan-made music, games, art, visual novels, like Sigyad. You know, different flavor of the month or even flavor of the year games come and go, but over time Touhou has stood strong. I think all of these fan works is a big part of that. The in-game story of Touhou is fairly minimal, so much of the characterization in people's minds is based on fan consensus. People have collectively agreed that Rumiya and Chin are adorable little children, Yukari is insecure about her age, Sanae is a prostitute, and Yuyuko is a lazy, fat idiot. In Sigyad's case, though, Sakuya and Natori are portrayed pretty faithfully. Sakuya essentially plays a caregiver role as a maid, so it's plausible she would be the type to worry about others' well-being. Natori believes that Kappa are sworn friends to humans, so she should also have an interest in helping the reader out. When starting a new save file, you wake up on this beach with soothing sounds of the tide in the background. From this point on, the VN is exactly what the title says. Sakuya will ask you some questions, prompting you to specify a personal problem you might have. She'll respond with some advice on how to approach that problem. This is where Sakuya's caregiver type role comes into play. Sakuya comes across as exceptionally gentle and kind. She immediately lets you know that this beach environment is your personal area, assuring you that you can return anytime you want, no matter what. The way she begins the conversation proper is so matter-of-fact, like it's expected that you would be here to have the back and forth that comprises the visual novel's main structure. In this sense, it almost feels like a professional therapy session. First, start off by telling me how you feel, she says. Sakuya is technically supposed to be a teenager, but her time manipulation powers make her situation complicated, makes her age kind of irrelevant. There's no telling just how much of life she's actually experienced. No doubt a Time Lord would have run the gamut of emotional issues throughout their life experiences, and of course had all the time they ever needed to overcome them. So, it kind of makes her suitable for giving generalized life advice. Sakuya exudes the kind of patience you would expect in all of her answers. Even when using her spell card, Dangerous Action Behavior, she has a sense of grace. Truly a comforting force, almost a motherly figure, or again, a trustworthy therapist. There's one thing though. Sakuya's advice is safe, middle of the road, nothing revolutionary. Nothing that'll really be telling anyone anything they don't already know. Sakuya is a fictional character, of course. The writer has no idea who's going to be reading the visual novel, therefore no real ability to write anything super specific as far as giving people advice for their problems. Mundane and generalized advice is kind of a necessity for the medium. One of Sakuya's pieces of advice is to just ask a professional for advice if suffering serious anxiety symptoms. She's not an expert, she says. That's obviously reasonable. You wouldn't want to fool anyone into thinking that the advice you're giving is coming from a place of authority when it's not. Not that that's like an issue with a visual novel like this, but still. You also wouldn't want to overreach and end up giving bad advice on a subject that you don't know anything about. Still, the question remains, does Sakuya's advice have value? To a lot of people? Probably not. I personally didn't benefit directly from any of Sakuya's advice. The branch that came closest to applying to me is feeling like I don't belong anywhere in society. Sakuya's suggestion of meeting new people through conventions, clubs, generally just finding people with common interests and going from there is solid advice. But it's nothing I don't already know. Nothing she said in any of her dialogue branches opened me up to any new course of action in my life. But I still think there's value in this VN. For one thing, it can be pretty helpful, even if you're in a very normal kind of situation, to just hear someone lay out some options that you have. If something's really bothering you, if you have a real problem in your life, it can be hard to get your thoughts in order in a way that'll let you just see the most obvious answers. This is why you talk to your friends about your problems, but, well, that leads me into the Natori DLC. Taking a look at the recent edition of Kawashiro Natori can give us a clue as to who benefits from this visual novel. Natori first appeared in the 10th game in the series, Mountain of Faith. She's based on the Japanese myth of the Kappa, aquatic monsters which seem, overall, kind of goofy. The details don't really matter as far as Natori's depiction except that they love cucumbers. In Sakuya Izayoi gives you advice in Dab's DLC, Natori Kawashiro offers you advice in exchange for the cucumbers and eats the cucumbers. The cucumbers are a more important detail than you might expect. Perhaps, unsurprisingly, the reason why is hinted at in the name of the DLC. There's a decent similarity between the kind of advice you get from Natori and from Sakuya, but some difference too. Natori's advice is a bit more practical. This is most obviously embodied in the areas she offers to give advice in: friends, failures, and finances, the latter of which being a purely practical subject. But even her tone and, her mindset when it comes to the way she gives advice seems a lot more direct. Friend treating you poorly? They're not your friend. Cut them out of your life. Failed at something? Failure is just a learning experience. People insulting you for failing at something? No, take valid criticism as constructive feedback, ignore the rest. Don't blow all of your money at the casino. These parts where she gives an example of what to say to a friend to bring an issue up with them are a hilarious example of this. She's still being nice, it's still a wholesome experience, but I would never say she comes off like a mother figure or even a therapist. Like she would say a kappa ought to, she just seems like she's being a friend, telling you what she thinks. Something that highlights the tonal difference between Natori and Sakuya is a new graphical feature that the DLC brings. This cartoony anger vein we can see on Natori. You could think of it as kind of a counterpart to these sort of mirthful pluses that appear on her and originally appeared on Sakuya. What's really great though is that while the two may have a different demeanor, they're different people, they have the same intention underneath. They want to help you. They're friend. Look closer at this anger vein. A plus sign. So what's the deal with what I said earlier? How can Natori in particular give us a clue as to who can benefit from this visual novel? And what's the deeper significance behind the cucumbers? Well, it's right in the name. She offers you advice in exchange for the cucumbers. Combined with the difference in tone, this quid pro quo can actually make interacting with Natori a lot less tense, or at least a little bit less tense, for a lot of people. People who have issues with trust could speculate that Sakuya has an ulterior motive for helping them. People with low self-esteem could be made to feel that they've been a burden to Sakuya, or simply be reminded that they haven't provided the same value as she has. This sounds ridiculous, obviously. They're just video game characters in a short meme VN. And yeah, I don't think anyone actually thinks those things consciously. But if this is how their minds usually work, there can be just a little lingering bit of these feelings involuntarily popping up when dealing with Sakuya. At least enough that they would slightly prefer dealing with Natori. Nothing to worry about there. She asked for cucumbers in exchange for advice. You give her cucumbers, she gives advice. Even for those with full-blown personality disorders with symptoms like this, like avoidant personality disorder, dealing with Sakuya should be way easier than dealing with a real person. And that's the key. That's the key to the question, who benefits? Who benefits from this visual novel? Who benefits from the advice Sakuya and Natori gives? Who benefits from getting advice from them? Well, people who can't open up to anyone else. Avoidant personality disorder is the example I brought up because apparently about 1.7% of the population suffers from it. Some researchers think it's the most common personality disorder. What's really interesting is that it's considered to be underreported and understudied due to its inherent qualities. In a video about AVPD, counselor Dr. Todd Grande explains,
AVPD is not well understood. It's also understudied. So we don't see many articles on this disorder compared to other disorders like borderline personality disorder or narcissistic personality disorder. Second reason, the nature of the disorder itself. Many people who have this disorder obviously avoid other people, so that would include treatment professionals.
Anyway, I'm not talking about AVPD in particular. It's just a good example. Different personality disorders have symptoms like this. People who are completely normal and don't have personality disorders can feel symptoms like this sometimes. You just don't want to talk to anyone. Feel like you can't talk to anyone. Introvert or extrovert, opening up to people can be really hard. Having a fictional character from a series of really good shmups give you little nuggets of wisdom might just be what a lot of people need. It's a lot easier to pay $1.50 for this VN than it is to show vulnerability to even a close friend. This may be the very same principle behind the recent popularity of the so-called virtual YouTubers or virtual idols. Some of these are Japanese girls getting deep into character. Some are essentially just streamers using their characters as a way to protect their anonymity. Either way, there's an extra layer of separation that could provide a bit of extra security to those who have bad social anxiety issues. Behind Ami Yamato, Ruru Suzuhara, and Hatobatsugu are real people. Real people come with baggage. But no matter how neurotic you are, you never have to worry about Tsugu judging you. All this might sound like a weird direction to take this review. Definitely is. I doubt even Team Sigyat had any of this in mind, but the VN is explicitly about mental health. Behind a virtual idol or a virtual YouTuber is somebody doing a voice, somebody doing the motion capture, whatever might be involved. Behind Sakuya and Natori is a writer, an artist. Yes, I'm going there. I'm gonna say it. Virtual professional mental health counselors. Imagine being diagnosed with bipolar disorder by Barney Calhoun, being prescribed SSRIs by Kreia, having a CBT session with Bayonetta. Alright, maybe all that's a bit much, but I think you get my point. There are a lot of people who find it very hard to open up to anyone. Their friends, their family, whatever. Sometimes it's people with full-blown psychological issues, sometimes it's normal people going through a tough time. This visual novel isn't for me, but it's easy to see why this $2 VN could provide a bit of relief for many. A quick little therapy session done up as a cute Touhou fan game. Nice and easy, no need to muster up the courage to spill your guts to anyone. Just keep clicking and Mommy Sakuya will lend you a bit of advice. Anyway, for people like me who don't get a lot out of the VN's counseling aspect, there are still reasons to enjoy Sigyat. Like I said, just seeing some solutions put out there can be helpful, even if they're obvious. It admittedly was a relaxing read-through. You could say it did temporarily improve my mental health just because I found it therapeutic. Anything decently written in the right setting can be therapeutic. Combined with the cute art and the demeanor of the characters, it did the trick. Sakuya and Natori are really adorable in this. Ryan Thee's artwork in this VN may appear rudimentary, but it's clearly trying to mimic the art style seen in the official Touhou games. Zun's art is the embodiment of soul. While technically lacking for sure, Touhou fans have not only dealt with it, we've grown to love it for its positive qualities. Touhou art is truly one of gaming's biggest pleb filters. This fairly accurate recreation of the Zun style in Sigyat is enjoyable enough for the accuracy alone, but the way Touhou characters seem to almost inherently exude a kind of emotional softness is perfect for this visual novel. The seemingly amateurish technical side of the artwork isn't just something to be tolerated in this VN, it goes hand in hand with its overall presentation. Things like GUI design and small sound effects can have a big impact on a software's feeling. Take a look at Sigyat. Very generic fonts, extremely plain GUI. The background graphics for Sakuya's scenario is just this photograph of a beach, which clashes starkly with the anime-style 2D sprite of Sakuya. There are several easy-to-catch typos, particularly in the Natori DLC. The presentation of Sigyat is exactly what its ridiculous name would lead you to believe. Amateurish. A joke. Something the creator didn't take that seriously and which purchasers aren't expected to take seriously. That's what I really like about Sigyat. It's technically basic, has an amateurish presentation, a mundane presentation as well. It can be completed in about 20 minutes, but all of that's expected. It's expected based on its goofy premise. What's not expected is that it approaches that premise with complete sincerity. The software is completely devoid of jokes, meta-commentary, or even shallow Touhou fan service. The only possible exceptions to this are Sakuya's dab and Natori's over-the-top enjoyment of the cucumbers. Even these don't really count in my mind, because they come at the very end of an advice route, making them feel earned. And anyway, they're in the title. They're an important part of the title. Sakuya Izayoi Gives You Advice and Dabs is a visual novel with a completely accurate name. With just its title, it sets up the expectation that it'll be a throwaway joke VN, while simultaneously telling you exactly what it's actually about. It's cute, it's cheap, it's cozy. Out of 10.